There's a folder in Poland Pickup called hashtag last name design principles. You need to copy that to your folder in schools. Remember that I do not have a folder in schools. Inside this folder, you're going to find an images folder and a source text folder. So all the images you need for the website are in here, and the text that you need for the website is in here. Then you're going to need to open Dreamweaver and define your site, because remember that's always the first thing that you do. You can call it Web Design Principles or something of the sort, because that's just what shows up. Whoops, over here's the Files panel. Over there, remember you're going to have to browse to find your folder in your schools, not on your desktop. And then we can get started building our layout. So with our bookworm site, we created kind of a template that we could use as the grounds for all of our pages. And we're going to do the same thing here. In Bookworm, we used one div in order to hold all of our contents in place. However, in this one, we're actually going to have 4 divs, and they are going to be one inside of the other, and they are going to hold all the different pieces in place. So I'm going to start off in split view, and you can notice that my code view is smaller than my design view, and you can adjust it. Whoops, there we go, as such, whatever you need. I also want you to see at the bottom here in the visual side, in the design side, that there is a zoom menu where you can zoom in and out as needed. Okay? All right, so let's go to our layout tab, and the third one on here is our draw AP div. So I'm going to select that button, and I'm going to draw a rectangle, and it doesn't really matter how big it is because we're going to use our styles to define it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to give this particular div a name, and I'm going to do that down here in my properties, bottom left, see where it says AP div 1. I'm going to go ahead and name this one layout. Okay, and like I said, there's not any magic name that you have to save things as. They just have to make sense. So you can see here in the code view that you have your div called layout. And then if we move over here to the CSS styles panel, if yours does not look like mine, it means it's probably on current. Click on all, and then you'll be able to see it. So if we click on layout, then we can specify the properties and the values for this particular div. So I'm going to start by changing my position to relative, and I'm going to set my top at 5 pixels because I want there to be a little tiny buffer at the top of the page before my div starts. I am going to start off by making my height 500 pixels, although later on I'm going to change that. I'm going to delete the left, and that's right here with this trash can. I have width. I'm going to set it up as 1000 pixels. I'm going to leave the ZX index at 1. And now I'm going to add a couple of things. I am going to add the property, and I want you to notice that I can type it in. So if you're pretty good at spelling, you could just go ahead and type in margin left and margin right. Or if you click on it and you can type M, it's going to take you to those properties. So I can choose margin left and make it auto. And then I can do that again, margin right, and make that. Whoops. Hello. Oh, I have to type it. My bad. There we go. So I can actually see how my div is centered on my page, and it shows me the margin here on the side. Okay? All right, so the next div that we're going to put in, I'm going to go ahead and draw it. This is going to be where our banner, and that's a graphic element that a lot of websites have. And the banner is just a graphic that's going to tell what the website is about. So I'm going to click on that div, and it's right now ap-div1, and so I'm going to rename it header. I could rename it banner, whatever. But this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky for some people. If you look over here in your code, you can see the opening and the closing div tags for the layout. I'm going to hit enter a couple of times to give some space between the opening and the closing. And then I'm going to select the opening and the closing header, and I'm going to just drag it right there. Okay? Now, it probably is going to move yours a little bit on your page, and that's okay, because now we're going to come here into the CSS styles, click on header, and now we're going to change the properties and the values for this one. So header is going to have an absolute position. The height of it, I want it to be the same height as our banner, and that is 125 pixels. I also want the width of it to be the size of our banner, which is going to be 980 pixels. I want there to be 10 pixels on the left. Now, if you look, notice that's right here. So when we're talking about left, because we have it inside the layout div, it's 10 pixels from that wall, which then based on the math, 1000 for layout, 980 for header, is leaving 10 pixels on the right as well. So then that brings me to top, where I'm also going to give it 10 pixels. Okay, so I've got my height, my width, my position, left and top, and then my z-index, which is coming in at 2. Okay, so we can see how that's building a kind of a little bit of a border around it. I'm going to get my draw AP div tag again, and I'm going to draw a little rectangle over here. This is going to be where our navigation goes. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to, once again, I'm going to rename. My video is getting in the way. I'm going to rename that, and I'm going to call it nav, short for navigation. See it right here in the code? So it's already highlighted, okay, because of the cookie crumbs here. I'm going to go ahead and drag that after the div of header, okay? So both of those are inside my layout. Now, if you ever see this CSS styles panel and say refresh, just click refresh. It'll do it, okay? So now I'm going to click on my nav, and I'm going to give it some properties and values. I'm keeping the position here of absolute. My left is going to be 10 pixels because I want it 10 pixels from that wall. Okay. My top, on the other hand, I don't want it to be 10 pixels because if I made it 10 pixels, look where it goes. It's up here even with the header. So what I need to do, I know there's 10 pixels at the top. I know this one is 125, so now we have 135, and then I want 10 more pixels below it. So that means I want the top to be at 145 pixels. Okay? So if you need to stop and do the math, you can do that. I need my width to be, I think it's going to be 200 pixels. I may wind up changing it later, but for now it's going to be 200 pixels. And I am going to put a new property on here. It is called padding. Now, I actually I could give padding to every wall of my div by just adding padding. Or I could do it to the specific side. I only want padding on my left and my right. So I'm actually going to put in 5 pixels of padding left and 5 pixels to the right. Okay? And if I click on it, and then I can type in some text, and you can see what it is. The text that I'm going to put in is going to be my actual navigation. So I'm going to type in home, planning, alignment, contrast, proximity, whoops, repetition, color, typography. I feel like I'm forgetting one. And I guess that's it. Okay, so the only last property I need to change now is going to be my height. And I'm actually going to set my height at auto so that the size of this div is going to change based on what I have in it. Okay, I have one more div to draw. This div is going to be here, and it's going to hold all the content in place, which is why I'm going to call it content. And then I'm going to move content just inside that closing div tag there. So everything is inside the layout. You see opening layout, closing layout, opening header, closing header, opening nav, closing nav, opening content, closing content. Okay? It's important that you see that they are nested inside. So now if I come down here to content, again, I'm going to do position absolute. Based on the math that I have calculated, 200 plus 10 plus another 10, I am going to make this left be 200, 230 pixels. I am going to make the top, where's the top? There we go, 145 pixels. The height we'll leave for right now. We'll change it in a minute. I'm going to put the width at 750 pixels. Now, I'm also going to add padding left of 5 and padding, whoops, I probably should, hang on. Let me do that again. Padding right of 5. Okay? And that padding, as you can see, basically it adds size to it. Okay? And then we have a z-index of 2. I think I've got everything there that I need. So now I'm going to type in heading, and I'm going to hit return, and then I'm going to type content. And that's just so that you can see where things are. Okay? I'm going to make the heading an H1. Leave the content as a paragraph. And I'm going to type one more thing. I'm going to type copyright, comma, by, and you're going to put your full name by, and you can put SFMS student. Okay? Now, we actually have a copyright symbol that we can put on. So if you'll double click that word copyright, you can go over here to the code view, and just before the word copyright, we're going to put in the code for that. Okay? So if you put in the ampersand and then C, notice how it tries to guess the code that we're looking for. So I am typing COP, and there it is right there. So I click on it to add it, and then I come over here and I can see that copyright symbol. I can put a little space there, and it's done. Now, that paragraph tag, I want my copyright symbol to be centered on the bottom of the page. So I'm going to, inside that paragraph tag, I'm hitting space and then align. And then again, you see that it's trying to guess the attribute. So I'm going to hit return. And then I see my options. I'm going to choose center. And now that particular piece of text is centered in the middle of the page. One more thing I want to add, and it's going to be here in the code, and it's going to have to be in the next video.